Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to take a few more seconds to let everyone file in, and we'll get started. So, I think most of you know me, but my name is Christina Stanchu, and I'm an associate professor of English and the director of the Humanities Research Center here at VCU. And I wanted to welcome you and also to say Happy Native American Heritage Month. We had a great attendance at our virtual event last Thursday night with Roxanne Dunbar-Ortiz, who gave a great talk. And we are so excited to welcome LeAnne Howe to VCU tonight. It's also great to be in person and to welcome you here to our last event of the semester in the HRC series on Native Ground, which is part of our HRC theme this year, Race, Ethnicity, and Social Justice. For their help behind the scenes, as usual, I'd like to thank Tyler Conrad, our events and communications manager in the college, as well as Caslin Applewhite, the events and communications coordinator for VCU Libraries. And we look forward to hosting more hybrid and in-person events in the future and are very grateful for your support, Caslin. Thank you. Today's event is co-sponsored by the Department of English, VCU Libraries, and the Office of Multicultural Student Affairs. And I'd like to thank Dr. Catherine Gracia and Dr. Miriam Kadeva for their support. As many of you know, our speaker events follow a similar format. I will briefly introduce our guest, who will speak for about 45 minutes, and then we'll have some time for questions from the audience. And then those of you who are at home, we encourage you to post your questions in the Q&A function, and we'll take them in the order in which we receive them. So on to the fun part now, after all these administrative details. I am thrilled to welcome to the Humanities Research Center one of my favorite people in the field of Native American and Indigenous studies, a great teacher and mentor, and one of the most compelling, essential, and funniest Native writers and artists of her generation. I will mention her scholarly and artistic accomplishments shortly, but I thought I should also let you know, some of you may be too young to know this, that she appeared on The Daily Show with Jon Stewart maybe 8-9 years ago in a segment on mascots with Asif Mandi called The Trail of Cheers, which my students always enjoy when we watch, and it's widely available on YouTube. Professor Howe is an enrolled citizen of the Chocktaw Nation of Oklahoma. She received her MFA from the Vermont College of Norwich University in 2000 and has held professorships at the University of Minnesota, University of Illinois, and now holds the Eidson Distinguished Professorship in the Department of English at the University of Georgia. Come on in. Where she also directs the Institute of Native American Studies. LeAnne is the recipient of many awards, including a Ford Fellowship, a Lifetime Achievement Award by the Native Writers Circle of the Americas, an American Book Award in 2002 for Shellshaker, an Oklahoma Book Award, as well as a Fulbright Distinguished Scholar Award to Jordan. In 2015, LeAnne received the Distinguished Achievement Award from the Western Literature Association, and in 2014, she received the MLA Inaugural Prize for Studies in Native American Literatures, Cultures, and Languages for her collection of stories and essays, Talking on Other Realities, a book she read right here in this room, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. We couldn't remember, but it did happen, and we can prove it. And it's delightful to have you back. Other recognitions of LeAnne's work include a Native American and Indigenous Studies Association, or NISA, award for literary criticism with 11 other scholars for the volume Reasoning Together, the Native Critics Collective, which was named one of the 10 most influential books of the first decade of the 21st century for Indigenous scholarship in 2011. LeAnne has also lectured nationally and internationally, from England and Ireland to Japan and Romania and many other countries. A new book, Conversations with LeAnne Howe, edited by our colleague in the field, Kristen Squint, is forthcoming in 2022, right? February of next year. Besides fiction, essays, poetry, and essays, LeAnne Howe's credits also include screenwriting and on-camera narrator for documentaries such as Indian Country Diaries, Spiral of Fire from 2006. With James Fortier, she co-produced the documentary Playing Pastime, American Indian Fast Pitch, Softball, and Survival in 2007. And her third documentary, and this is really exciting, Searching for Sequoia, premieres this month on PBS. And you can also watch it at the Pocahontas Reframed Film Festival this weekend. I believe the screening is on Saturday, right? Her many books include Famine Pot, The Chocktaw Irish Gift Exchange, 1847 to the present, co-edited with, I'm going to butcher his name, Padraig Kirwan, Corey Kirwan, published by Michigan State University last year. And When the Light of the World Was Subdued, Our Songs Came Through, a Norton anthology of Native Nations poetry, co-edited with US Poet Laureate Joy Harjo and Jennifer Foster, and published last year by Norton. Her other works include Shell Shaker, Evidence of Red, Miko King's An Indian Baseball Story, Chalk Talking on Other Realities, and Seeing Red, Pixeled Skins, American Indians, and Film. And tonight she will read to us from her 2019 play, Savage Conversations. Welcome back to VCU and welcome to the HRC, LeAnne.
Hi, everybody. I am delighted to be back at VCU and to see my colleague from a long time. Well, it's been a while. And it was wonderful to have such talented scholars at the University of Illinois. And we had postdoc fellowships at the time, and they've expanded that in American Indian Studies since I've been gone. So I'm going to read from my latest book, and I look forward to hopefully some questions and answers, and I'll answer. I'll try to answer a little bit about the reason behind why Savage Conversations and how that came about. I'll just say that Mary Todd Lincoln really did imagine that a savage was in her bedroom every night, and every night he cut her up. And her descriptions are very graphic and shocking for a woman of that day. And also a little bit sexual, because she seemed to believe that he was touching her face, touching her, and then slitting her eyelids open every night while she was in Bellevue Place, and which is a sanitarium in Illinois. So when I read that she blamed this insanity on an American Indian, I was incensed. And I'm very lucky to have a colleague who had worked on the Todd family. In fact, he had published a book. He's a historian, he's since retired, but he was very helpful to me in the early part of this research. I do a lot of research, I try to. Even though I'm not a historian, I have a real fondness for stories that are set perhaps in the 19th century. And I think that's the reason for that is that it's an exotic place. You know, just as being in a foreign country is exotic to many of us, things are very different in the 19th century. And so I have to do a lot of work to try to capture that. So I am going, pardon me, I'm going to read from Savage Conversations, and it's in a series of poetic refrains. Oh, and also this coming March 22, the University of Georgia is staging this as a full production with actors, and they're bringing a director from First Nations in Canada. And we have a wonderful cast. It's a small cast, but one of the people that's playing, he is playing Savage Indian. He's also from the Chocktaw Nation in Oklahoma. So we're really fortunate because he lives in New York and he's an actor there. And so we're really fortunate to have such strong actors that will do this work. Okay, so Apocrypha, June 1875, Bellevue Place Sanitarium, 333 South Jefferson Street, Batavia, Illinois. Mary Todd Lincoln. Before you can think, you forget, and then remember. A dress of blood, gloves I refuse to wash ever. What is it to a wild Indian? The president is shot. Fool, I was his all in all, his Molly, his child wife and mother, his puss. Savage Indian, thoughtfully. Well, he called me puss too. Catafalque, June 1875, Batavia, Illinois. Midnight. Mary's bedroom. The underarms of her nightdress are badly soiled. Her small feet are swollen, the skin paper thin. She speaks to Mr. Lincoln as if he's in her room. Savage Indian has a small box on his lap filled with her jewelry. He fingers each piece and finally fastens a pearl necklace around his neck. Mary Todd Lincoln. Nightly, I examine our ruined heads in my hand mirror, yours and mine. Our eyes dangle like dull grapes on a broken vine. Is it the candlelight? Savage Indian watches her with menacing eyes, but does not move. Mary Todd Lincoln. I touch the blemish on your face, finger your blood-stained shirt. A drop of spittle has escaped your tight lips, your bare feet, clammy as fish, all there and here. I kiss the mirror, beg you to wake, fight to catch your attention through some mad theatrical gesture. Remember? My bed, always a catafalque to you. Oh, let fly my flesh, hair, and eyelids. Pay the nightjar who regularly serenades and, like us, steals the milk of goats. Here at last, I'll tell it all. I did wish you dead, sir. 8,039 times for all the days you ran sideways from our home, whistling a nightjar's tune. Pay them all now, sir, before dawn's light. Savage Indian reads aloud the inscription of her wedding ring. Love is eternal. Catafalque 2, June 1875, Batavia, Illinois. Mary Todd Lincoln and Savage Indian pace around the room like amateur boxers. Mary Todd Lincoln. Arriving nightly without invitation, you make my room a ceremony as nightjars sing, wing clap, cheer their song, inhabited at dawn by God's will, like we are. When shall I tell them the truth? Where shall I keep the truth? Under my frayed petticoats? It will not flower now. She fingers a small picture of Abraham Lincoln on her bureau. There is no need to wait for tea. I confess, though you coveted another, I long for the pleasure of your coarse skin, money to spend, kid gloves, chiffon and satin ball gowns with lavish trains, properly hemmed, and doomed children. Tonight, let us hoist the catafalque over a new grave. Hold my hands above the dank earth as the nightjar serenade. Oh, what a heart smasher you are, Mr. Lincoln. Adieu, my confessor, my all and all, lover, protector, ghost, husband. She turns to Savage Indian, wishing for nothing, not even breath. Take the flint knife, cut me, I dare you. The rope seethes. Savage Indian feeds Gar woman, June 1875, Batavia, Illinois, 3 a.m. A slight breeze blows the gauzy curtains open. Midnight floods the room. Mary Todd Lincoln. Cleave unto me, seduce, fetter, handcuff, wheel clamp the iron, savage. I cease all protestations. Savage Indian checks her scalp for nits, wipes excess bear grease from his hands on her nightdress, filling her gaping mouth with fescue and sod. How does it taste, Gar woman? You said if they're hungry, let them eat grass or their own dung. Trader Andrew Merrick's words, Lower Sioux Agency, August 15, 1862. But your sentiments spoken more than once. Mary Todd Lincoln swallows. June 9th, 1875, I am in possession only of my name. Mary Todd Lincoln, bewildered with a joy so noble, I too could expire. Savage Indian places her wedding ring on his little finger. Well, who says Abe is dead? Long Night's Moon, June 1875, 4 a.m. Many candles light her room. The air is hot and stifling. Savage Indian. He shackles Mary Todd Lincoln to the chair for the 57th time tonight. Gar woman, that's your true name. Gar feed at night, sometimes eat their own eggs. You know, we were all fish once. The scent of woman during copulation reminds us. Mary Todd Lincoln. Vulgarity at last, just like my Mr. L. He once asked me, why is a woman like a barrel? Savage Indian shrugs. Mary Todd Lincoln giggles. You have to raise the hoops before you put the head in. Savage Indian breathes deeply through his nose, snorts out the bad air, leaves her side, and walks around the bedroom. Mary Todd Lincoln, fiend, he was my lover, father, comedian. Savage Indian sniffles and pinches her things. The knit comb on her bureau intrigues him the most. Fishy in here, he says. Mary Todd Lincoln soothes the wrinkles of her sour nightdress, the one she's worn since March 1875. Ghoul, specter, poltergeist, banshee, you are the fishy one. Savage, be gone from my head. Savage Indian, quiet. Someone is coming. Mary Todd Lincoln, no doubt the wandering Jew. Nightly he steals my pocketbook. Savage Indian, woman, be still. He moves in close, gently caresses her face, takes the smallest sharp flint from his leather pouch, slits the soft skin above each eyelid, sews it firmly open with a thread of silver filigree, then cuts out her left cheekbone. Mary Todd Lincoln, ecstatic. Oh, at last, I can see the world as it really is. The rope thieves. Now I lay me down, June 1875, 4 a.m. Mary sits in a chair in her bedroom. A small candle blooms on the bureau. Mary Todd Lincoln, tattoos adorn his arms and hands like night blooming cirrus. They prick the skin, slash my will. The savage says nitpicking takes time and patience, but can be very enjoyable for both parties. Savage Indian combs her oily hair. Immerse any nits, he says, or lice in kerosene. Pull them from the hair, drop in bowl. Pin the clean sections of the hair aside. Scissor divided segments close to the scalp. Wait. Mary Todd Lincoln. These many days after my dear Abraham, I have come to this, hairless with a deformed cheek. Those of us with eyes sewn open perceive nothing to fear. Not gunpowder, walls afire, wild Dakota Indians, the presidential box at Ford's Theater, a hangman's noose. Savage Indian, silence, Gar woman. Ever so gently, he takes 2 sharp flints from his leather pouch and examines them and chooses the smallest. He approaches her face with determination. They assent to their nightly ritual, the one she craves. Mary Todd Lincoln picks up the mirror and studies her face. Her thin upper lip curls into a smile. I faint from the ecstasy. The rope seethes. The rope. Out of the Fort Snelling coffin, I swing like a fool on a holiday, backward, forward, and around and around. The rope speaks. July 4th, 1875, Batavia, Illinois. The rope hangs from the ceiling in Mary Todd Lincoln's sitting room. The rope, I done it. I done them all. I come when I'm called, like a dog, a horse, a lover. This is how I make brothers and sisters. The rope begins to fashion a second noose with his hands. Start with a piece of string or a piece of rope 3 feet in length. Bring one end of the loop downward to the original rope, fold it into thirds. Pardon me. It should form a wide S. The lead, the left side, should be left longer so that you have some string left at the end for tying something. With the bottom of the original C, wrap the end of the rope around and around and around, from the bottom near your hand upward. With the rope that has been wound around the sea, poke the end through the top of the left by the S. Once the loop is fully tightened, the task is complete. The rope laughs, holds up the noose for inspection, hangs it from a rafter in Mary's bedroom. A good noose, he says, should have one giant loop at one end and a piece of rope left at the other end. The rope seethes. 2 down, 36 more to go. Savage Indian laments. July 4th, 1875, Batavia, Illinois. Savage Indian walks amid all the clutter in her sitting room. Mary Todd Lincoln paces. Savage Indian. I know isolation, silence, the slow descent downward, lost somewhere in midair. Garwoman, I have crippling doubts, but I surrender nothing, not even in death. He looks at their surroundings. I no longer have to worry. That doesn't mean I'm not suspicious of the living. They enter my dreams uninvited. In Dakota land, they are pulling down the last of our dead. Bodies of men and women hang by a rope of lies. When I was a human being, I would sing the air thick with Dakota songs. December 26, 1862. In 150 years, the citizens of Mankato will shiver, asking why their ancestors hanged 38 Dakota Indians over a handful of eggs. When I look at your world, I weep, because in the end, even your life is a captivity account. We are all captives of one sort or the other. He stops and drinks water from her china teacup. For the 38 lives abandoned. In that moment in Mankato, I was misplaced. Maybe the night jars carried my spirit to safety, back to the beginning, even before Mother Earth existed. You are probably wondering when, what millennium? Because in your eyes, every hour is measured. To die alone while dying with 37 others. This is where I tell you about my friends dying, a death song. He sang it, then we sang it together. On the platform in Mankato, we tried to grasp hands, shouting to the winds, Minnesota Makochi, land where the waters reflect the sky, the land where we die. Words caught in our throat, choked by a masculine rope. Savage Indian raises the teacup again to salute the rope. Rope he held fast. The rope takes a bow. 1862, almost like a birthday, tiny needles sew shut the muslin cloth around our faces, buried in a mass grave, only to be dug up, sold by physicians to be used as medical cadavers, later stored in cast iron pots. Still, our bodies cramped and squirmed in the wind, our spirits scattered. All of us, Garwoman, still hang, and you dressed in that stinking nightshirt, the one you refused to remove all these months, you can never cover the past. The soldiers are pulling on their boots. They are not the ones they think they are. When I am myself as I am tonight, every word is a weapon. When I am myself as I am tonight, why can't I forget what happened, and take you amidst the dried up tingling in my head, the dried up prickle between my legs, the ravaged filaments of desire. Oh, I lied to the settler. I lied to preachers, but Gar woman, you are not who you claim to be. You bring a child into the world and intensely regret it, despite your theatrical cheers for pity when another son dies. You believe you know what must be done with your bruised and tainted teas. But I have seen the ghosts of Abraham, Eddie, Willie, and even Tad shrink when you enter a room, shadows escaping your burning sun. What happens next, Gar woman? You've swallowed all but one of your eggs. Savage Indian grabs Mary Todd Lincoln by her shoulders and pulls him to her. Because the wind refuses your touch, because the insects abandon the ground where you sleep, because your prairies wilt the prairie grasses, because at dawn every breath is a trial, because with your eyes sewn open, you still see nothing, because everything you touch leaves a bruise. The muskets are being reloaded. The carbines are being reloaded. The large bore rifles are being reloaded. The Gatling guns are being reloaded. Emancipate me. Fire. The rope thieves. And now a bloody red tongue unspools. And so that's a little bit from Savage Conversations. Thank you. I think I'll finish with a short reading, and then I'll take questions if there are any in the chat or from the audience. I am working on a new book. It's called 1918 Union Valley Road. It's completely different from Savage Conversations. It's a novel in verse, and it's an experiment for me because I haven't done this kind of work before. My novels are usually just standard, in standard novel form in text, but this one I wanted to have a different structure, and I'm still working on it. And I'd like to finish it over the Christmas holiday. I'm not sure I can do that, but 1918 Union Valley Road is about my grandmother's life. And her, she contracted the 1918 flu, she and her husband both, and they were living in Stonewall. They had a farm there, and she's Cherokee, he was Irish. His father was a first-generation immigrant, and so they fell in love and married, and of course, and it's right up front, so I'm not giving anything. Of course, her husband dies and she's left, and my grandma lost everything. And the farm, she became a housekeeper to keep body and soul alive. And I'm trying to write through about 1921 with her because she is caring for so many people and working as a housekeeper. So back then, a lot of really hard conditions on Native women, but also non-natives too. So Stonewall was a town of both that had natives and non-natives. So in the months to come, an astonished Pentecostal holiness preacher says Iva Hoggett was called by God. She has the mahogany mark of divine protection, he says. Lack of oxygen, you fool, her Irish father-in-law says. She had the flu. So that's just a little introduction to the story. Union Valley Road, Oklahoma. Maybe it was while reading the 1918 Union Valley Bulletin, a political handbill given John Hoggett by a hacking cougher at the feed store. Maybe it was a sour apple gone mahogany black that he'd eaten from his wife's cellar stash. He knew he should have given it to Trudy, their hog. Maybe it was a 6-mile walk to and from his father's farm in Stonewall, Oklahoma, just to ask, need help with that heifer, Pop? Maybe it was the burning, tingling, running over the top of John's head as if he was being roasted alive, filling him with fear. He coughed into his fist. Iva, honey, lock the gate so the Crowder boys can't steal our cow. He coughed into his fist. No, no, Iva, honey, he coughed into his fist. Iva, so cold. Winds like a siren whipped the junipers outside, maybe 90 per. He swayed left, then right, and onto their Jenny Lynn bed, a wedding gift, coveralls still on. Shocked into consciousness by sunlight, Iva supports herself with her arms and leans forward, eyelids thick and gluey. Has she been crying in her sleep? She asks. The bed is cold, the stove is out, her long black hair matted by high fevers. In her dreams, the sound of a gurgling brook. She looks at John, her teeth chatter. He is completely blue now. She presses on John's chest. Blood and mucus slip between his blue lips. Breathe, John, breathe. Don't worry, I gave our baby girl to your sister Yuda yesterday, the day before, maybe last week, but she's safe. Didn't make a sound, just waved, bye-bye, mommy, bye-bye. Like you, she doesn't complain. Like you, she's more Irish than Cherokee like me. Breathe, John, breathe. Take a breath, John Hoggett. How many times? Breathe. Iva curls up beside him, played out. Who has never bruised a living flower, she whispers. Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to take, if I should die, before I wake. Breathe, John. The sun is yet a rumor. Iva sleeps like the dead until she doesn't. On the third day, she feels herself rising. She observes herself in the mirror, washes her mahogany stained cheeks. That's odd, she thinks. Lock the gate, John, or the Crowder boys will steal our cow. She coughs into her handkerchief. John, honey. She coughs into her handkerchief. John, honey. She coughs into her handkerchief. Hear me. Yes, Iva. You live in unmeaning dreams, he says. The grave is ready. John, honey, stay. I washed your Sunday shirt, hung it on the line to dry. We can bury our faces in summer laundry. Taste the scent of sun in a field of light, breathing as one. Stay. Iva is dreaming again. She hears his name, John, the sound like a bell on her tongue. John, on. God. Breathe. Iva remembers 1918. Give me your hand, John Hoggett. Remember our fishing hole at Bing? Fat fish fed from the Blue River. I said switch canes from there made the very best Cherokee baskets. Remember that? Give me your hand, John. Together we'll catch a mess of perch, cut canes for basket, and head home. We can invite your folks to supper, only a short wagon ride away, not far. Give me your hand, dearest. Remember last fall, we helped build the Bing PO, named in honor of Sir Julian Byng, a British War I hero. Your father had a conniption, you, an Irishman, putting an Englishman forward. Give me your hand, Johnny boy. I call you home now. I call you home tomorrow. 1,000 times I call. Even as our bodies flake into stars. Get up, John Hoggett. You cannot stay in this deathbed. Get up. Walk on, Iva, he says softly. Walk on, my girl. My girl. My. Iva relents. No, it wasn't like that. You didn't see. He was lying quietly, mouth shut, one hand on his chest, the other frozen in midair. We were curled beside one another when they found us. Beside, what a wonderful word. Beside is the scent I carry. Beside the first man I touched and him touching me. Beside John, where I was raised from the dead, fully awake. I heard something, perhaps our baby. Kitten crying for a saucer of milk. Kitten crying because she is lost, because she is forsaken, because she's alive. Not the cat, me. Iva and John Hoggett read of his death in the Union Valley Weekly. Birth, Jan 31, 1893, Washington, United States of America. Dead, 7 January 1918, Union Valley, Pontotoc County, Oklahoma, United States of America. John, not much of an account of my life. No mention of you, our daughter, farm, 2 Holsteins, and Blackie the cat. Iva, dearest, there is no anthem for a man who marries a Cherokee girl barely 18, makes her a widow at 20, knowing she'll linger another 63 years. John, Iva, how could I know? Iva, it's in the newspaper. John, we could go on like this. Iva, forever. Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions if there are any about the work with Mary Todd Lincoln or the work I'm currently doing with my Cherokee grandmother. If there are any questions, yes.
On the work about Mary Todd Lincoln, how did you create Mary Todd? Like, what process did you use to create Mary Todd Lincoln as a character versus like the historical figure?
She left a lot of letters. So she wrote and wrote a lot. So I took a lot of that from her letters that she had written while she was in Batavia and her trial. they trotted out a lot of her actions. For instance, she did carry a gun. She said she was going to kill Robert Lincoln. That's one issue. And she claimed that she broke out at one point to go get more laudanum, and she claimed she was gonna kill herself. And what she bought was like brown sugar. They had gotten on to her that there were 4 pharmacists there. So they sold her. They knew she was a laudanum addict. So they had given her a bottle of brown sugar water, and she took it right there and drank it. And she doesn't die, but she's constantly trying to either kill herself or the other people around her. It's really pretty amazing. And some of the business was in not only her diary, but in the newspaper clippings about her at the time at Bellevue Place. So the woman who did this book, the painting for it is a wonderful artist. She's Ojibwe, Andrea Carlson, and she's had exhibits at the Smithsonian in London and so forth. So she agreed to do this picture and many more, actually. So she went to see the room where Mary Todd Lincoln lived, and it's very tiny. So she sent me pictures of it. And it was surprising how small it was. So there's this grandiose, she tells us in some of her newspaper, some of her letters that she has a piano, and she didn't at the time. So there's a lot that hasn't been written about her, but I think really should be discussed on a bigger volume than what I certainly did. So, and she does, I think she did try to kill her kids. Further on, you get into, he ends up being her confessor, and he's trying to get her to acknowledge that she tried to kill her, not tried, she killed her other kids by laudanum, giving them too much laudanum, because she was constantly doctoring them with laudanum. Well, you give laudanum to a kid, you kill it. And so Robert survives, I think, because Abraham Lincoln took him with him when he was really little, and he stayed with his dad as Lincoln was making the rounds in Illinois.
So first, I want to thank you for coming here. I've really enjoyed listening to you speak. My question is on Mary Todd Lincoln's spiritualism, which I know you must have researched for your book. Because to me, in listening, it's almost as if she invited the spirit in her attempt to reach out to Abe Lincoln and to her deceased children. And so I wanted to know your thoughts on that.
Well, I have her, she was a spiritualist on top of everything else. She did hold seances trying to get them to come back, but they never show up. And I think that's because they're scared of her. I mean, she doctored them unto death. She certainly is a very complex person. And I honestly, I don't think they ever showed up. You know, there's that picture that's invented, that never happened too, of Abraham Lincoln with his, that was just drawn in by the artist. That never happened. So my feeling about it was that, well, hell yeah, would you drug them unto death. Why would they show up for you? And I think her punishment in her own mind, because she knew she did it, was to be without them. And when she gets released, she writes a letter to the first woman lawyer in Chicago to plead her case and get her out of jail. So she has all this money sewn on her corset. She's got about $3,600. here that she wears all the time. It's the reason she wouldn't take off her nightdress, and they finally wrestle her and get her to take a bath. And then from there, she's able to leave the asylum. She was never really locked up. It was more of a suggestion. And she goes home, goes to her sister's home, gathers herself, takes that money and a bunch more money that she had access to, and goes to Pau, France, and stays there until she comes back home to die. And I think that's, you know, I feel sorry for her, but she also is a very complex character. And I think she did drug her children unto death. And he gets her to say it. She never admitted it, but he prods her toward the last third of the book, you know, to try to get her to admit some of the things that she did. And she did hire a Confederate spy to take her letters, and he published them in the newspaper. He published her writing about the Lincoln presidency in the newspaper because she wrote them. And everybody, they sent out the Pinkertons to try to find out who had these letters. And her husband, Lincoln, finally realizes, oh my God, these are from Mary. And he calls off Pinkerton's men to find out what happened because he knew it was her. And so I think, and you stuck with her, huh? You know, what a thing. Yeah.
I really like the fact that you give voice to one of the victims of the Dakota 38. And can you talk to us a little bit about that process? Was it something that she made references to in one of her letters, or some of the work that you did with the friend, the historian, just how you came about that creative process to give voice to one of the 38?
Oh, thank you for asking. You know, I am a writer that usually never strays from my own tribe. So this was a huge departure, and I probably won't do it again. I'm Chocktaw, but I also had a Cherokee grandmother who wasn't my blood grandmother, but she was our grandmother. So I'm writing about her life, but usually I try to stick to Choctaw subjects and whatever those may be. So I started working on this, and it was just because they kind of entered my my consciousness, and I visited, I did research. And so before, and Coffee House was also very, Coffee House Press was very worried too, that because they're in Minnesota, and the press was very worried about, oh my God, what are the Mankato, what are the Dakotas up there gonna think? And so he sent the manuscript via the tribe's lawyer to read it and let us know if they had any issues with it. And they never responded. They didn't come back with anything, whether it was like silence. And I thought, okay, they're not mad, and they're not going to kill me, and they're going to let this go. And they did. So I gave a reading in Bemidji with a bunch of other writers, and there were 2 rows of Dakota women. And sitting up front, I didn't know they were Dakota at the time. I knew they were Native, but I didn't know. And there were Dakota men in the back. And I was reading with a couple of other people, so I read from the manuscript. And they cried. They all started to cry. And I thought, I'm on the right path. I got it. And so the interesting thing to me, I'm working on this rope character, and the rope kind of floated into my room. As I was out in Las Vegas, I was doing a reading out there for one of the professors out there who's Native, and she has since retired. So I went out there and I was reading, and the rope kind of floated into the bathroom where I was about to take a shower. This bathroom was real bright white and just fluttered there, like I, later put him into this story. And like that, in a flash, it disappeared. And I thought, oh my God, I have to include the noose. I have to include the rope, the noose. That wasn't in my first draft in the manuscript. So before the book is published, I'm doing the reading. There are 2 rows of Dakota women. They're all starting to cry. And I thought, well, and here's the kicker. They had just been called during this same season to Fort Snelling to put a noose that was found at the basement, in the basement. It was in a small box. The noose that did the hanging, one of the nooses they'd cut down, and it was in the box, but it was making a lot of noise. The museum said, it shakes. And so that's why they were crying, is that I had picked up somewhere, I don't know, the noose itself, and I didn't know about the noose that was found. And so I think that was the fact that the noose wanted to be heard. And I was writing this book, and that energy just clumped onto this project. And I am very proud that, they didn't boycott me. They thought I was on the right path, and that the noose was found before this book came out, and that it had been there all this time. And now it was put to sleep. But it could only be put to sleep by the Dakota spiritual people and a medicine person and the warriors that went to witness the ceremony. So I think all that boils down to is, besides research, is that I think that this is not happenstance. When we're called upon by a story, when a story calls us, we have to respond. Even though I'm not Dakota, and I would never presume to be that, I think that I was listening, and the story reached out to me. I don't know why. I don't know why, but I think, and I have a lot of really good Native women writer friends, and we all kind of share stories of how this came into being, how this project developed, et cetera. And I think that one of the things that we talk about is the ability to listen. Listen, because stories seek you out, and be willing to go with that story because they're alive. They have been told, and the stories are circling around, and they kind of choose us, no matter what it is, and or who it is. But the story kind of chooses us. And I know. Perhaps other writers don't think that. That's okay, but this is what I know to be true. Yeah, so thanks a lot for your question.
LeAnne,
Yes.
I have a follow-up and also a question from the audience, which sort of speaks to that, and then we'll go back to Christine. A question about the genealogy of the project. when did you get this idea to start the book? What was the first, like the impetus for this book? The research, was it a letter, as Peter asked? Was it, was the germ? And Jessica Cassie here back home on Zoom asks, you know, since you're a filmmaker, what prompted you to write this as a play as opposed to a screenplay or a film?
Oh, thank you for asking. The idea for this play came, well, this book, Coffee House never wanted to call it a play, even though it is. And it's a story. That's what my editor wanted. Anyway, the idea for me came when I visited the Lincoln Museum in Springfield. And I'd kind of wandered around and I'd been looking around and I'm not sure whether that was there or if it's something I imagined. But the memorabilia, her dresses, her gloves were, as I recall, and I have a flawed memory, but as I recall, she was there, not in body, but just so many of her things. So much of that museum is around the event, you know, that when he got shot, and which was a terrible thing for her to witness, and it probably pushed her right over the edge. I don't know that. And from that, those physical things, I just began to think, well, what else happened? And the big event in Lincoln's presidency was the hanging of 38 Dakotas, and that they didn't deserve that. They didn't have a trial. They had no one to speak for them or translate to them what was happening to them. And the army didn't even know whether these were the people that had committed that heinous uprising, the Sioux uprising, which is, I think, what? You're defending your home and now you're uprising, yeah? So all of that history just sort of came out for me. And I thought, well, I'm gonna write about the woman and what she knew. And turns out she knew a lot. She wrote a lot, she had big opinions, and she cavorted with Southern spies. That's pretty big. That's a big deal. She did more than cavort with them. She needed money, so she would sell off Lincoln's papers so they would run in the newspaper, and she'd get paid for doing that. That's a big deal. And he finally realized that she was the one who was selling off his papers. And so, yeah, I had to call off Pinkertons. So who were these people? Were they really happily in love? I don't know. I wouldn't wager a bet on it. What was her role? Why was she doing these things? I don't know. I don't know. So I focused on the Dakota hanging and her interest in that.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
So two things. First, I do very much believe what you said about like the spirits coming to you. And Alice Walker wrote something similar at the end of The Color Purple. She wrote something like, I want to thank all the spirits for coming to me. And then she signed it Alice Walker, writer and medium. So I thought that was interesting. But I wanted to know if in your research for this book, you came across anything related to Abraham Lincoln's supposed like Melungeon origin.
Oh, no, I looked. I mean, I'd heard that as well. And I couldn't substantiate that, but I think it's because I focus so much attention on her. And I'm not a Lincoln scholar, but I do know plenty of Lincoln scholars that have looked at that. I'm just not one of them, including the George Sanders. I had a talk with him who wrote Lincoln in the Bardo, and I told him what I was doing and that I was writing about her, and I wanted to know what he found and what could he say about all of this. And I knew he'd left it out, and he said, well, he was very supportive of the project, but he did say, well, I never thought about Mary. I didn't include her because I didn't get that research. And so, and I thought, oh, well, okay, I'm doing something different. And he was very encouraging, you know, and I always appreciated that. Yeah. So no, I didn't follow that up. I know that there are many scholars, and you might consider Stephen Barry's work on well, he really, maybe not, he really focuses on the Todds. And so maybe he's not the right scholar, but there are scholars that have looked at that, and I don't really know the latest scholarship on that. Good luck.
Can I ask one last question? It's about the new work. Can you tell us a little, which sounds very personal, way more personal than Savage Conversations and then your previous books. Can you tell us a little bit about, you know, the origin of this narrative, of this new novel, and where it's going? That this is still a work in progress, but very close to the end, right?
Hopefully. This is a departure for me because I'm writing about my Cherokee grandmother. I'm adopted. I have two mothers, Chocktaw mother and a Cherokee mother. So my grandmother on my adopted mom's side is, of course, Cherokee. They were Cherokees. And so I had a great relationship with my grandmother, well, the whole family, you know, there are a lot of them. They're all natives. And so I began to look around for another project. And I knew when the pandemic hit, I thought, wow. I've always known about Granny's situation in 1918. I knew that because she told me. And I hadn't thought about writing about her and her husband, who was a second generation immigrant. His father had immigrated here. And I thought a lot about, why have I never considered her story? Her cheeks, when a person is deprived of oxygen for a long time at a low level, their skin begins to turn blue and then turn black. And so that's how they recognized that she was about to die too. But they had holed up in the house like everybody during this pandemic. And so many people just died. And so she lived on Union Valley Road. Their farm was just off-site. And all these years, I'd had these two pictures of her wedding dress, her in her wedding dress. And the wedding dress that she ends up marrying the grandfather that I knew. And I don't think honestly, I don't think she cared for him, but she wore, I don't know. I just have that feeling growing up. Anyway, her wedding dress 3 or 4 years later, maybe 1918, 4 years later, she remarries, and because, you know, she's on hard times. she wears the funeral dress to the wedding, this second little marriage that she has. And we have a picture of her completely in black. And I thought, oh my God, that's a hint of what she was thinking. And they never got along. And all the years of my childhood, they never slept together either. How they created my uncle, I don't know. You know, one time I don't know, but that's the story I'm trying to tell about the 1918 flu amongst Indian people in southeastern Oklahoma. So, you know, they kind of coalesced events like, oh my gosh, we're locked down, just like Granny. So I hope to finish it in December and move on. I got some other novels I want to write. So yeah, like everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I don't know if this mic works. We have some copies of LeAnne's book over there, and she's happy to sign the copies for you. I just wanted to thank you all for coming, and those of you at home, you can't see me now, but it's okay, you can see LeAnne. I just wanted to say that this is our last event of the semester in the series Native on Native Ground. And looking ahead to next semester and to continue the conversations we started this semester, we are delighted to welcome to VCU Professor Kyle Mays of UCLA on February 3rd. So mark your calendars, please, who will share with us his most recent book called An Afro-Indigenous History of the United States, which just dropped. So if you're looking for a Christmas present, this should be epic. It's the same press that published An Indigenous People's History of the United States. It should be very good. And as I mentioned at the beginning, tomorrow, the Pocahontas Reframed Film Festival begins in person at the VMFA, and the HRC is proud to support the festival this year. And we hope to see many of you, both here and at home, join us for this and future events. Thanks so much for spending this time with us today, and have a good night. Thank you.